The morning sun stretched lazily across the sleepy rooftops of West Belmere, tinting the sky in hues of coral and gold. Rosa Rivera stood in her cramped kitchen, balancing a tray of buttered toast in one hand while rummaging through a cupboard for the bag of plastic cups she had promised to bring to school. Her daughter, Eleni, shuffled into the room, dragging her overstuffed backpack like a small, reluctant turtle. "Toast or bagel?" Rosa asked, trying to inject cheer into her voice. "Just toast," Eleni murmured, rubbing her eyes. Rosa took a moment to study her. 9 years old, all limbs and gentle eyes, still caught between childhood wonder and the shadow of grief. Her brown hair was tangled from sleep, and she wore the sunflower print dress she'd picked out the night before, her favorite. It wasn't new. They had found it at the back of a donation bin at the community center 3 months ago. The hem was starting to rise awkwardly above her knees, and the shoulders were a bit too loose, but Eleni adored the way the skirt flared when she spun. "You sure you want to wear that one?" Rosa asked casually, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "I like it," Eleni replied softly, almost defensively. Rosa smiled. "Then that's what matters." They left the house with a paper bag of supplies, Eleni's lunch packed carefully with the last granola bar and a juice box saved from Rosa's night shift at the cafe. The walk to Belmere Elementary was familiar, 5 blocks past manicured hedges, sleek electric cars humming past, and front porches adorned with seasonal wreaths. Rosa always tried not to compare. But today it was harder. As they neared the school, Rosa noticed the other children dressed in freshly bought clothes. Button-downs crisp with ironing, shiny shoes, matching headbands and vests. Parents stood in clusters sipping lattes, clutching DSLR cameras and pastel-colored photo props. Eleni's steps began to slow. She looked down at her dress, brushing invisible lint from the fabric. "Do you think I look okay?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Rosa stopped. She knelt down on the sidewalk and took her daughter's hands. "Eleni, you look beautiful. Not because of what you're wearing. Because you're you. And no one else has your smile or your heart, okay?" Eleni gave a tiny nod, but Rosa saw the flicker of uncertainty behind her eyes. It was a familiar flicker. Since losing her father 2 years ago, Eleni had grown quieter, more introspective. She didn't talk much in class. She spent recess sketching birds instead of playing tag. And while other girls traded bracelets and secrets, Eleni often sat alone with her colored pencils. At the school entrance, the gymnasium buzzed with excitement. A banner reading Class of 2035 arched above the doors, flanked by clusters of balloons. Folding tables offered juice pouches, muffins, and glittery chalkboards for props. Rosa spotted Mrs. Damson, the event coordinator, and handed over the bag of paper cups. She turned to Eleni. "You ready?" Eleni bit her lip, then nodded. "I think so." As the crowd grew, Rosa stepped to the edge of the gym with the other parents. She scanned for her daughter and spotted her standing near a group of 4th graders, nervously smoothing the front of her dress. She kept checking her ponytail in a tiny mirror she pulled from her backpack, trying to tame a stubborn curl. Then Rosa saw something, an exchange so quiet, so seemingly casual, it could have gone unnoticed. Mrs. Kilburn, Eleni's teacher, leaned toward the teaching assistant and whispered something. Rosa couldn't catch every word, but 2 stuck out like splinters: "Not appropriate clothes." The 8 gave a hesitant glance toward Eleni and nodded slightly. Rosa's heart slammed against her ribs. She didn't move. She couldn't. Her feet felt like they'd been cemented to the floor. Then, with an overly bright smile, Mrs. Kilburn called out, "Eleni, sweetie? Could you come over here for just a moment?" Eleni looked confused but obeyed, stepping forward with tentative steps. "We're working on spacing for the class photo," the teacher explained. "Why don't you wait over there on the bench, just for a bit?" Rosa watched it happen, the pause in her daughter's step, the dawning understanding in her eyes. She didn't argue. She didn't ask questions. She simply turned, walked to the edge of the gym, and sat quietly on the wooden bench. Folded hands. Lowered gaze. Not a tear. The photo went on without her. Children were arranged in neat rows. The photographer gave cues: smile wider, turn your shoulders. Flash. Laughter. No one called Eleni back. One boy near the front row pointed at her and muttered something. Rosa didn't hear it all, but the word thrift rang out. Another snickered, "Her dress looks like my grandma's curtains." Still, Eleni didn't move. She just sat there, face turned away, as if she could pretend she wasn't there at all. Rosa's fingers dug into her palms. She wanted to scream. To march across the gym and demand her child be included. But something held her back, fear of being labeled, of making it worse, of becoming the story instead of protecting the one who already bore the weight of silence. The parents around her shifted, whispered. Some had clearly heard. None spoke up. The camera clicked again. When it was over, Eleni stood and walked toward Rosa slowly. Her eyes were dry but dull, as if something inside had quietly folded in on itself. "Can we go now?" she asked. Rosa nodded, her voice too tight to speak. They walked together through the gym doors, past the balloons and leftover muffins, into the crisp air of a bright spring morning. And though the sun warmed Rosa's skin, she felt nothing but cold. That's when she turned to her daughter and asked, "Do you want to do your own picture day?" Eleni looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Rosa said, pulling out her phone, "we don't need their lens to see you. We just need the right one." And with that, she typed a name into her contacts, a name she hadn't used in years. A friend, a photographer, and maybe a lifeline. The phone in Rosa's hand buzzed barely a minute after she hit send. 10 minutes. Just say where. Marco Bell never wasted time with formalities. Years ago, before he left their small town for a brighter future in the city, Marco had been the one behind the lens during some of Rosa's most joyful memories. He had captured her husband, Luis, lifting a giggling Eleni high into the air beneath the maple tree in their backyard, back when life had been fuller, before the accident, before the emptiness crept into their house like fog. Rosa looked at Eleni, whose small shoulders were hunched under the weight of a disappointment no child should have to carry. "Come on," she said softly, gently steering her daughter away from the school and toward the quiet hill behind it, the place where the playground ended and the concrete path gave way to soft grass and wildflowers. It was a little pocket of calm Rosa had always loved. Today, it would be their studio. Eleni didn't ask questions. She just followed. They sat on the low stone wall at the edge of the field. Rosa handed Eleni the juice box she had packed for after the event. The girl pierced the straw into the foil and took a silent sip, eyes downcast. "Do you remember Marco?" Rosa asked after a moment. Eleni gave a small nod. "The camera guy." "That's right," Rosa smiled gently. "The one who took that picture of you and Daddy with the hose in the backyard." A flicker of a smile appeared at the corners of Eleni's mouth, brief, uncertain. "He's coming to take your picture," Rosa continued. "Just for you. No backdrops, no lines, no rules. Just you being you." "Why?" Eleni asked, voice barely a whisper. Rosa took her hand. "Because you deserve to be seen. They didn't see you in there today. But I did. And he will too." They sat together in the golden spring light, hand in hand. It was quiet. Peaceful. Rosa could feel her daughter breathing beside her, the shallow breaths of someone still unsure if they're allowed to take up space. Then, from around the corner of the school staff parking lot, the sleek black car appeared, gleaming, low to the ground, and out of place next to the battered minivans and hatchbacks. It rolled to a stop near the curb. The door opened. Out stepped Marco Bell. He looked exactly as Rosa remembered. Charcoal blazer, open-collared shirt, and a matte black DSLR slung casually across his chest. His dark hair was just slightly longer, with a trace of silver at the temples. As he approached, a warmth spread over Rosa that had nothing to do with the sun. "Eleni," he said with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, "I heard there's a photo emergency." Eleni blinked at him like she wasn't sure he was real. Marco knelt in front of her. "I'm Marco. We met when you were little. You used to run from my camera like it was chasing you." Eleni's lips twitched. "I don't hate it now." Marco's grin widened. "That's what I like to hear. So, want to make some magic?" Eleni looked at Rosa, seeking reassurance. Rosa nodded. "Only if you want to, baby." After a moment, Eleni stood. Together, they walked a little farther, down the hill, through the field, until they reached the edge of a small grove of cherry trees. The blossoms were in full bloom, pink petals dancing through the breeze like confetti thrown by the sky. Marco got to work, his movements swift and practiced. He set down a soft reflector, switched lenses with the care of a craftsman, and found the perfect angle with the sun casting light like a spotlight on Eleni's face. "Okay," he said, gently, "let's start with something easy. Stand tall, chin up, arms loose. Look past me, like you're dreaming of something wonderful. Click. Now give me a little spin. Let's see that dress twirl. Click. Click. Click." Rosa stood at a distance, arms crossed, Not from the chill but to hold herself together. With every shutter snap, a little more of Eleni returned. Her shoulders straightened. Her expression shifted from tentative to curious to joyful. And then, just like that, Eleni began to smile. Not a forced school picture smile. A real one. The kind that bubbles up from deep inside and floats out, light and free. Marco clicked again. Perfect. You're a natural, Eleni. She beamed at him. He showed her the back of the camera, letting her see herself the way he saw her, radiant, steady, brave. She leaned in, eyes widening at the girl in the image. For a moment, she seemed not to believe that it was really her. I look different, she murmured. You look like yourself, Marco said. And that's better than anything. Eleni looked at Rosa again, her cheeks flushed from the sun and movement. Can we keep doing more? All day if you want, Marco replied, his voice soft. They took more shots, her holding a single cherry blossom, standing beneath the arching branches, sitting cross-legged in the grass while pink petals drifted around her like snow. Eleni laughed freely now, sometimes mid-spin, sometimes just from the joy of feeling light again. Rosa felt something inside her loosen. It wasn't just about the photo. It was about what the photo meant. This was Eleni's moment of reclamation. Not just a picture, but proof. Proof that she mattered. That she was worth capturing, not in spite of her dress, her quiet nature, or her grief, but because of them. When Marco finally lowered his camera, the light had softened into the amber of late afternoon. I'll send you the edits tonight, he said to Rosa. You'll have prints tomorrow. You don't have to rush, she replied. I do, he said, gently. Some things are too important to wait. As they walked back toward the school's front entrance, the last of the picture day cleanup was wrapping up. Leftover balloons were being stuffed into a minivan. Parents chatted as they carried props back to storage. Rosa spotted Mrs. Kilburn standing near the gym door, clipboard in hand, still directing the teaching assistant. Her eyes drifted toward Rosa and Eleni, then landed on Marco, the camera still around his neck. There was a flicker of confusion, then recognition. She did a double take. Because Eleni wasn't hunched anymore. She wasn't dragging her feet or looking at the ground. She was walking tall, her hand in her mother's, head held high. Marco approached the teacher, handed her a sleek black card without pause. Vesper Studios, he said with a smile. In case you want to make sure no one gets left out next time. He didn't wait for a response. He turned and gave Eleni a playful salute. You were incredible today, he said. Eleni gave him a shy wave, her smile stretching all the way to her eyes. Later that evening, after the sun dipped beneath the horizon and the quiet of their modest apartment settled in, Rosa stood in the kitchen rinsing out the thermos from Eleni's lunchbox. The silence wasn't heavy, just still, like the exhale after a long day. From the hallway came the soft padding of bare feet and the sound of a bedroom drawer opening. A moment later, Eleni appeared, holding an old wooden frame. Inside was the only full family photo they had, Marco's picture from 3 years earlier. Luis was mid-laugh, water splashed across his shirt, Eleni perched on his shoulders, shrieking in joy, while Rosa stood beside them, sunlit and smiling. She set it on the table and pulled up a chair, studying it. Do you think Daddy would have liked today's pictures? She asked quietly, her fingers running over the edge of the frame. Rosa didn't hesitate. He would have framed every single one. And probably shown them to strangers at the gas station. Eleni giggled, a real giggle, not the hollow kind Rosa had grown used to. It was the sound of a child remembering that joy still belonged to her. Do you think he'd put one on the fridge? He'd take down the grocery list to make space, Rosa smiled. Good, Eleni said seriously. Because I want to put one there too. The fridge door clicked open, and Rosa found a magnet shaped like a cherry blossom, a leftover from an old craft fair, and pinned it in the middle of the fridge, ready for the photo that hadn't even arrived yet. Later that night, after Eleni had fallen asleep with her sketch pad resting on her chest, Rosa received the message. Marco, file sent. Check your email. Let me know if she has a favorite. Her heart skipped. She opened her laptop and clicked the download link. And then, she stopped breathing. Image after image appeared, each more beautiful than the last. Eleni standing tall in her sunflower dress, light catching in her hair, petals swirling around her like whispers. One shot captured her mid-twirl, skirt flared, arms slightly outstretched. Another had her seated beneath the cherry tree, a blossom tucked behind one ear, a thoughtful expression on her face as though she were holding the weight of the world, and letting it go. But the photo Rosa couldn't stop staring at was the one where Eleni looked directly into the lens. Lips slightly parted, eyes full of a question and an answer at once. It wasn't just a good picture. It was the picture. The one they would remember this year by. Rosa printed it out immediately on her old inkjet printer. The colors weren't perfect, the trim was slightly crooked, but it didn't matter. She smoothed the page gently, then carried it to the fridge and placed it under the cherry blossom magnet. Next to it, the old photo of Eleni and Louise still hung, a relic of a different time. Now, they were two portraits side by side, one where she was lifted high into the air by someone who adored her, and one where she stood on her own. The following morning, Eleni woke up with sleep still clinging to her hair and pajama pants riding up at the ankles. She padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, and stopped short in front of the refrigerator. There it was, her photo. Her. Framed by soft morning light coming through the window, her face glowed from the glossy page. Eleni stood frozen for a moment, then whispered, "I like it." "You should," Rosa said, handing her a piece of toast. "You look like a superhero." Eleni smiled again, eyes never leaving the photo. But then her brow furrowed slightly. "I didn't feel like one yesterday," she said. "You were one yesterday," Rosa replied. "You were brave." Eleni chewed silently for a moment, then leaned her head against Rosa's arm. "Did you tell Marco thank you?" "I did. But I think he already knew." That afternoon, Rosa's phone rang. The screen read Belmere Elementary. Her stomach clenched as she answered. "Hello?" "Hi, Ms. Rivera," came the strained voice of the front office secretary. "Mrs. Kilburn. Asked to speak with you about yesterday." Rosa waited. Then asked, "Is this about Eleni being excluded from the class photo?" There was a pause. "Yes," the secretary admitted, tone flat and overly polite. "She'd like to explain. Perhaps, if you have time, you could meet." "I don't think that's necessary," Rosa said firmly. "Thank you." She hung up. There was nothing Mrs. Kilburn could say that would change what had already been felt. No policy explanation, no rehearsed apology about dress code expectations would erase the moment her daughter had been quietly told she didn't belong. Some wounds don't heal with statements. Some just need different stories to bloom in their place. That evening, Rosa printed 5 more copies of the photo. She gave one to Eleni's art teacher, Miss Vaughn, a kind woman who had always encouraged Eleni's sketching and once called her a soul with colors we don't have names for yet. She mailed one to her own mother across the state. Her mother called the next day sobbing, saying, "She looks like she knows something the world hasn't caught up with yet." Another copy Rosa tucked into a novel Luis had given her before he passed, a book she hadn't been able to finish until now. The 4th photo Eleni carried to school. She didn't say much that morning, just tucked it into her folder and walked in with her head high. She passed by Mrs. Kilburn's classroom without stopping and went straight to the library. Ms. Vaughn later told Rosa that Eleni spent lunch in the art room, drawing a large camera surrounded by cherry blossoms. At the top, in bold, block letters, she had written, "Scene." Rosa took the drawing to the local print shop that weekend. Together, they turned it into a poster and hung it proudly on Eleni's bedroom door. Sometimes, justice doesn't come with a podium or a microphone. Sometimes, it comes quietly, with paper, petals, and a girl who decided she would not disappear. The story of Eleni's exclusion would not be told as a tragedy. It would be remembered as the moment she realized she didn't need to be included to belong. She just needed someone who knew where to point the lens. A few weeks passed. The air had warmed. Belmere's trees were full and green, and the scent of lilacs drifted through the open windows of Rosa's apartment. Eleni's cherry blossom poster hung proudly on her bedroom door, its message bold and unwavering, "Seen." But even as the petals outside gave way to summer leaves, the ripple of what happened on picture day continued. At school, Rosa noticed subtle shifts. A few parents she'd once smiled at in passing now avoided eye contact. Others, quiet, uncomfortable, offered forced greetings, their eyes flicking away before words could land. The silence said everything. They had seen what happened. They had chosen not to speak. But there were others too. One mom messaged Rosa on Facebook. "I saw the photos Marco took. They're stunning. I had no idea Eleni was so photogenic." Rosa replied simply, "She's always been beautiful. She just needed the right lens." There was no response. But Rosa didn't mind. This story wasn't for them. One Saturday morning, Rosa and Eleni stopped by the local print shop again, this time with a fresh drawing Eleni had made. It was a self-portrait in watercolor. Her dress was painted with soft yellows and pinks, her hair adorned with blossoms. And floating beside her was a camera, its lens glittering like a sunbeam. "I want to give this to Marco," Eleni explained. The print shop owner, a grandfatherly man with paint under his nails, looked at the picture and nodded. "She's got an eye," he told Rosa. "Not just for color, but for truth." Rosa swallowed the lump in her throat. She's learning to see herself. Later that afternoon, they visited Marco's studio in the old part of town, a place with high ceilings, brick walls, and large prints hung like museum pieces. Marco greeted them with a wide smile and a cup of lemonade he'd made himself. Eleni handed over her painting shyly. "It's for you." He looked at it for a long moment, then leaned down. "I'll frame it," he said, "and hang it where everyone can see." Behind him, dozens of portraits lined the wall. Brides in white, fathers spinning toddlers, teens with braces and bashful eyes. But none had the quiet gravity of Eleni's picture, the one Rosa had chosen as the centerpiece. It now hung framed in the front window of the studio. Passers-by often paused to look at it. A girl, standing alone in a breeze, gaze steady, smile just beginning to bloom. Strong. Unapologetically herself. One evening, as they were driving home from the grocery store, Eleni asked something Rosa wasn't expecting. "Do you think I could learn how to take pictures? Like Marco?" Rosa looked at her in the rearview mirror. "You want to be a photographer?" Eleni shrugged. "I want to take pictures of kids who feel invisible. Like I did. Make them feel like superheroes." Rosa blinked hard, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. "I think that's the most beautiful reason to become one." That night, Rosa pulled a box from the hallway closet. Inside was Luis's old camera, a clunky DSLR he used to take pictures of Eleni when she was a baby. It had survived years of storage, a cracked viewfinder, and a missing lens cap. But it still turned on. Still focused. Rosa handed it to Eleni. "It's not as fancy as Marco's," she said. "But it's yours if you want it." Eleni cradled the camera gently, as if it were something sacred. "I love it." School continued. The cherry blossoms were long gone, and yearbooks arrived filled with glossy pages of classmates, class projects, sports teams, and of course, the infamous class photo. The one Eleni wasn't in. It arrived in a sealed envelope along with an order form for prints. Rosa opened it, stared at the image. Rows of children in polished outfits. Giggling faces. Coordinated poses. But all Rosa could see was the empty space where Eleni should have stood. She didn't show it to her daughter. Instead, she opened her scrapbook, carefully placed a print of Marco's photo inside, and scribbled a note beneath it. The real class photo. The one that mattered. One morning, a flyer was posted on the school bulletin board, Student Showcase, Art and Talent Night. Ms. Vaughn, Eleni's art teacher, encouraged her to participate. "You could show your drawings. Or maybe one of your photos?" Eleni hesitated. "I'm not sure they'd want me to." "They need you," Ms. Vaughn said. "More than you know." That night, Rosa and Eleni sat on the living room floor with a stack of photographs printed from Luis's camera. Eleni had taken pictures of everything lately: trees, shoes, sidewalk chalk, bees, even Rosa's hands washing dishes. She picked one. A portrait of her friend Maya, laughing with her mouth wide open, spaghetti sauce on her chin. "This one," Eleni said. "It feels real." On showcase night, Rosa stood in the back of the school auditorium, heart pounding. Eleni stood at the front beside her mounted photograph, her poster reading, "Superhero Moments, Capturing What Matters." Some parents lingered awkwardly. A few kids from her class stopped to look. And then, something happened. A boy named Caleb, the same one who had made the thrift store joke weeks ago, walked up, looked at the photo, then at Eleni. He didn't say anything cruel. Instead, he said, "That's funny. Maya looks like she's about to sneeze." Eleni smiled. She almost did. "That's why I clicked it." Caleb snorted. "It's cool." And just like that, the air shifted. Not in some grand, cinematic way. But in the quiet, gentle hum of a new beginning. Later that night, Rosa tucked Eleni into bed. The house was dark, the only light coming from the photo still taped to the fridge. "Did you like tonight?" she asked. Eleni nodded, eyes already half closed. "Yeah. I felt like I belonged." "You always have," Rosa said. "But I'm glad they're starting to catch up." Eleni yawned. "I think Daddy would have liked the spaghetti one too." He'd say it was perfect. Even with the sauce on her chin? Especially because of it. Rosa kissed her daughter's forehead and turned off the light. And in the quiet, she realized something. You don't have to scream to be seen. You don't have to beg for a seat at someone else's table. Sometimes, you build your own. And then you invite others in, not with permission, but with presence. Summer arrived like a slow sigh, warm, golden, and full of small, quiet promises. The school year ended without fanfare. No apology ever came from Mrs. Kilburn. There was no dramatic confrontation, no tearful meeting in the principal's office. Just silence. A silence Rosa had long since accepted for what it was, the sound of people who didn't know how to reckon with being wrong. But Rosa didn't need their words. And neither did Eleni. One morning, a large envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a matte print of Eleni's portrait. Marco had sent it, mounted and signed at the bottom in his loopy handwriting. To Eleni, for being the kind of light you don't need a flash to capture. It wasn't the first time Rosa had cried over a picture. But it was the first time the tears were for joy alone. She let Eleni open the frame, and together they hung it in the hallway, right next to the framed photo of Luis with Eleni on his shoulders. The two photos stood like bookends, one from the before, one from the becoming. From that moment on, everyone who entered their home passed by that gallery. Friends. Neighbors. Rosa's sister from upstate. Even the landlord, who came to fix the leaky kitchen faucet, stopped and said, "Now that's a strong picture." And it was. But the real strength wasn't in the lighting or the composition. It was in the girl who stood tall in a donated dress, holding her own. Eleni started carrying Marco's old camera almost everywhere. It was still a bit too big for her hands, the strap constantly slipping from her shoulder, but she didn't mind. She took pictures of everything: stray cats snapping on fences, beetles on the sidewalk, her mother's hands flipping pancakes. One afternoon in July, while Rosa folded laundry in the living room, Eleni padded in barefoot. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," Rosa replied, not looking up. "Do you think I could do what Marco does? Like, really do it? Take pictures for people?" Rosa stopped mid-fold. "You already are," she said, straightening a pair of jeans. "But if you mean professionally, like as a job, yes. I think you'd be amazing." Eleni hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I want to take pictures of kids who don't feel seen. Like the girl who sits alone at lunch. Or the boy who never gets picked in gym." Rosa smiled. "Then you already know the most important part of being a good photographer." "What's that?" "Knowing who to look for." They created a small project that summer, just the two of them. Rosa posted online about it, asking parents if their children wanted a portrait, something candid, something personal. The response wasn't massive, but it was meaningful. A single mom messaged first, saying her son hated school pictures and always looked miserable in them. Another family reached out whose daughter had special needs and never quite fit in at school photo sessions. They met in the park, under shade trees and beside chalk-drawn sidewalks. Eleni would crouch low, tilt the camera, laugh softly with her subjects. She never gave too much direction. Just encouragement. "Be how you feel today," she'd say. "That's the best pose." Rosa watched from nearby, always amazed. This wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a mission. A quiet revolution in soft focus. Eleni printed the photos and gave each child a copy, no charge. She didn't want money. Just the joy of giving someone their own moment in the frame. One afternoon in late August, as the air hinted at fall, Rosa opened her email to find a message from the local library. They were hosting a Young Creators exhibit and wanted to feature Eleni's work. Someone had seen her photos online and recommended her. Rosa nearly spilled her coffee. When she told Eleni, the girl's face lit up, but with worry underneath. "I don't have a theme," she said. "Everyone else probably has, like, something cool." "You already have one," Rosa said. "You're showing the world what it means to be seen. That's more powerful than any theme." Eleni nodded slowly. "Can I call it the frame we choose? I think it's perfect." The exhibit opened on a Saturday morning. Photos lined the walls, Eleni's portraits, printed and matted, each with a handwritten caption. Not names. Not ages. Just feelings. "This is what it looks like to be proud." She didn't think she was brave, but she was. He laughed like he didn't need permission. People lingered. Some stared. A few wiped away tears. Marco came by, quiet and beaming, and knelt to Eleni's level. "You're doing something special," he said. Not just taking pictures, giving people space to exist. That's art. Eleni blushed and nodded. At the far end of the gallery was the final photo. Hers. The one from the cherry blossoms. The one that started everything. Beneath it, in neat print. Taken the day I decided to stop waiting to be included. Months passed. Life continued. But the photo remained on Rosa's fridge. Each morning, as Rosa made coffee and Eleni searched for her sneakers, it greeted them. A reminder of a day that nearly broke them, and the miracle that saved it. Not because someone apologized. Not because the school changed its policy. But because a mother looked at her child and said, "We don't need their picture. We'll make our own." And a child believed her. One night, as they curled up with popcorn in an old movie, Eleni rested her head on Rosa's shoulder. "Do you think there are still kids out there who feel like I did?" Rosa kissed the top of her head. "I know there are. Then I'm going to find them," Eleni whispered. "And take their picture." "You already are," Rosa said. And in the soft glow of the screen, the two of them sat side by side, not waiting for someone to make room for them in the frame. They had already built one. And it was wide enough for everyone.